Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
So I have some corrections to make. All right, got ahead of myself, as I sometimes do. Correction one, Aram and Syria are two separate armies that eventually does get swallowed up by Syria. But before that even happens, they are kind of their own thing. They would have come together within the Aram's army and the Syrian army. All right, so now when we do see the actual Assyrian army that is out there amassing, remember I kept saying there's an army of Assyria that is massing. Well, when Ben-Hadad came in and they took some of the cities. We see when he said, I've taken some of your father's cities, and on this note, I'm giving it back. Those cities that were taken, they never went back to Israel. So I'm painting this picture because I want you to understand that now Israel is in a state of kind of like internal turmoil, not just so much of what is going on with the armies around them and also with their armies going on between them. Israel itself now has areas and cities that have been conquested by an army that is closely associated with Assyria. All right, I say that to clarify this up because we're getting ready to see two armies on one side that shouldn't do something go against one army that is on the other side. I don't want to tell you the size because if you read, y'all kind of should be able to break it down, right? What's coming down the pipe? Where's more divisions coming? It's going to actually eventually lead to the complete fall of which side of the kingdom? Because that's the first side to go, right? So when the first side goes, because remember when I said that as we get further into the kings, we're kind of going to deviate more to the prophets. And if you've been reading ahead, it talks about the kings, but it's also talking about what the prophets are doing with the kings. And eventually, the books of the kings come to an end, the books of the Chronicles come to an end, and you get all the prophets. The prophets are going to these towns because now these prophets are doing what? Because of what we know that's getting ready to happen with the kings. What are the prophets doing? We already got two that was mentioned. Mm-hmm. And right now we are dealing with what two? Major here in the text. Two prophets. Which ones? Elijah. And who else? Because remember, he getting ready to Elijah. Right, Elijah and Elisha, right? He's getting ready to get, so those are like kind of getting ready to take over the story. Because we're going to hear stuff that Ahab is doing. We're going to get the things that the kings of the north were doing, but we're going to get a lot of things that are going to be prophesied about what kingdom. That we were reading? All right, let's go back. What has been prophesied about the kingdom so far? It didn't seem like it was a prophecy about the kingdom because it was really directed towards one person. Right. But what we should have never got disconnected from is this. God doesn't deal like how we see it. When he deals with something, he deals with an entire what? Nation. So with this prophecy that was on whose head? We just got to, because he did what? He took some land. He conspired. He caused murder. This was the thing that God said, nope, you got to go up there and talk to them about this. And the conspiring came from his wife who said, hey, secretly have a fast. And when he sat down, eat. Say it was, blasphemy, and then take him outside and stone him to death. So we see he's actually living with a conspirator. And this is the thing. Ahab lives in the land worshiping other gods. So it's like, man, this is the judgment for the nation. Because when he went and he prophesied this against Ahab, he said, because of what you did and made who do what? So now you see that this judgment, because now he's striking the head of this nation, which these lands will be deviated of. So let's go into the text now, and we're going to start seeing some of this unfold. All right, so 22. We just talked about Naboth and all that he lost. Mm-hmm. Ahab, after hearing this prophecy, he had what? Humility. He heard it. He wept. He went home. He probably cried to Jezebel, but he had humility. And the Lord recognized this and said, what? This won't happen to you, but to your son, to the next generation, meaning the kingdom will fall in the next generation. But Ahab, the prophecy much likely is going to, the actual physical dogs licking your blood up in the street, it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen physically to Jezebel. But as for a nation as a whole, this is kind of like the state the nation will be in. consider Israel a bleeding man that the dogs are ravaging, licking up the blood in the streets. Because what would happen after a war? What happens, you said? What happens? Somebody got to come clean it up, right? The beauty of a lot of the things that we experience here as Americans is we don't see war on our land. I think the last war fought on this country was the Civil War. We have been attacked, of course, but we have not fought war on this land. So we don't get to see the devastation that happens afterwards. However, in this would have been their life after the conquest. People would have lived in Israel. Ones who would have went out to battle to fight with the previous generals would have probably been taken into some type of captivity, or inside of those cities, there would have been some strife amongst the men. Because now you have a new group of men who are the alpha, more superior. Those who were defeated now are considered the lowly, stabbed in the street, murder, conquest. You can see how Israel doesn't have what the world would say is a God complex. They have a multiple God complex to say whatever God is the one you worship is right. So one says that I can kill you and take your land because it's the right thing to do if I conspire, because obviously we see that that's what Jezebel did, right? So we see that this is not just a war that has affected Ahab himself, but it's a war that's affected Israel as a whole. Now we have the land in the current state where the prophecy is being fulfilled on the person, and we also see the prophecy being fulfilled on the land. Israel is going into a state of turmoil. All right. And it continued 3 years without fighting between Aram and Israel, because they won, right? It was a deal struck between the two of them. Prophecy came. And it came to be in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. So this is where we're going to switch to Chronicles 22, because they're mirroring. Not if one stay there, one stay on one part, wherever you want. They're mirroring. And as they mirror, did I say 18? 18. So they mirror. Now this, as you see, we're getting ready round about kind of the closing of the Chronicles. A couple more chapters to kind of mull out. But it's going to kind of move on. We're going to move on more to this king. But as we see, these two things are going to start lining up. Remember what I was saying, as you read the Kings and the Chronicles, this is the way you can line the story up. Because now, if you would have just read that, Jehoshaphat would have just showed up to procession. You would have thought that Jehoshaphat and Ahab was just, oh, we're having this grand feast out here. Ahab is getting himself together. Because remember what the Chronicles were? They were a later rendition of just the things that happened with the kings. They would have talked about the things more procession. So when you see these two coming together, now you got a little bit more of the background and history of these two armies sitting outside. And you can get an understanding why Ahab is asking for help from big brother up the road, Judah. But what does this do for Judah? What does it do for Judah? Should Judah, now these are the things, now we laid out the platform. Now that we laid out the platform, Judah is Judah in a position where their decision can have future impact. Of course, we read ahead. It's easy to do it. But like, think about it in a retrograde, and we are citizens of Judah. We just seen what happened to Israel. Now we're all in here, and they come in there and say, we're in one of our little quiet rooms and say, it's a vote. Hey, y'all want to go inside with Jerusalem? Which one of you will raise your hand? We're in Judah. It's safety in these walls. We just seen what happened to Israel, and Aram they just took over some of the cities. In fact, we know that there was a deal struck to give certain cities back. But this king of Israel is now sitting there. Now we're in Judah. They say, hey, well, raise a hand. Who wants to go and help Israel? Because Aram is over there and they're problematic. And they're not by themselves. They got the Syrians too. Like nobody in this room would say, no, let's... But Jehoshaphat, he not only said, yes, this would be a great idea. Whatever you do, I do it. We're brothers. How can I? So I can see the moral code behind it. Would you let your brother sit up there and get beat up and watch it? Like, look, I've never had the big brother, little brother complex, but I do have a little brother that lives. Long story, tell you off the record. But I never had that relationship of a natural born brother. Right? But in the sense of my little brother was a fighter. So sometimes he would come to me and say, now he's my little brother, say, hey, somebody did something to me. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I have to go and help my little brother, even though I knew this was probably going to be problematic for me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think of that in the situation. What was the main thing I was thinking about? helping out my little brother, right? So I say that to point this. It's nowhere in the story that we can say how Jehoshaphat felt. But we can take instances from our real life to say, man, my little brother was over to get whooped. But it's also on this instance. You as a brother and your sister, and you know your sister or brother did something out of line, which was going to get you whooped in the long run. And if you settled that hitch with that said name brother or sister, parent was going to strike you. Stay with me here as I say this. Ahab should have looked across the table. Jehoshaphat should have looked across the table and saw the ladder. This is someone that eventually dad is going to come home and whoop him because what he has done. Even if I'm saddling up with him because he's getting whooped, it's probably going to give me a whooping too. Get where I'm going with that? Yeah. Because these things have been declared. Who declared this to Ahab? Which prophet? It was very specific. So if Elijah, and where does Elijah live at or hang at? He's in Jerusalem, in Israel. But when things get hot, where does he go? He goes to Judah. And if Elijah's a prophet, do you think this conversation might have went down with Joseph? I'm just saying, all speculation, because it's not in here. But we know the role of the prophets. We know that what they had did. So I don't think this information was not for the king. I don't think that he didn't, but it doesn't say. So I'm not going to imply that it wasn't. So I'm not implying that it was. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying it was. But it gives you something to think about when we see the nature of these stories, because yes, they are very, very tight in the lines on the paper for our reading privilege, but the impact and the power of the word and the actions that they all did, we can see that. So before these actions actually take place, we can actually look at some of the things according to what happened before to what's happening now that leads us to this. These two kings sitting across from each other in procession, planning to do what? A war against another nation. Aram. Who is Aram? An anointed nation. It was anointed as king of that nation to do what? As we see, they were being used as a chastising rod for the coming greater chastising rod. They were getting kind of already mixed up and dispersed. Israel, we would see. I think they may have mentioned a couple wars inside of actual whole entire. I don't want to say areas, but more so lands. You see, they said something might have happened in Issachar, or something might have took place in Dan, or you get what I'm saying. These are actual part of the tribes. Consider them a whole land, and now this whole city has been kind of repopulated by an outside source. So when we look at this, now we see, okay, does anybody here ever play Risk? The game? Risk was this game, right? They gave you a certain, everybody picked a continent you started, and they gave you a certain number of orders. Running really quick with the game. It's a fun game, played on deployment forever. It was the only game we played. The entire deployment was kind of crazy. But the way that they would set the boards up is you would have your men, right? And sometimes you would go in and you might have a conquest. You might set 7 men up in the middle of something that everybody has set their whole thing up, and everybody's like, it's crazy. Well, what happens is as you win, you have to leave one behind and then restructure your army. So think of this in these cities. As they would win, they would leave something behind that's not Israel anymore. Now we're seeing how the land is being shaped. So they would take their army back. And then they would come in and conquer another one, and they would reshape that town. It's not Israel, but the people there are still Israel. Everybody in Israel didn't die. I want this to be known because I want to show you how the sheep got lost. Remember when Jesus said, I came for the lost sheep. When Jonah goes and tries to avoid his mission, these are the lost sheep that he's being sent to preach the message of what is coming. You get what I'm saying? So if you can see how the sheep got scattered, when you hear it in the New Testament, you're like, oh, I get it. This is why he went to that land. Oh, now I see why it was important for Jesus to go here. Oh, because in the Old Testament, these are the people that he would have went to retrieve, because they would have been who? Lost sheep. And the lost sheep would have been who? Israel.
So it came to the lost sheep of Israel.
Right. Israel. Because Israel is the one that really gets dispersed. When you look at what happens to Jerusalem, what happens to Jerusalem and Babylon?
So
They took men into captivity, right?
Right.
They all went to Babylon. But what happened? Didn't certain people?
Remnant stays.
A remnant. So it's showing you that the land never really got lost. It was just desolate. Nothing was there. It was kingdoms. It was wars fought in this land as the Jews returned back to the land. Remember, we talked about Ptolemy. We talked about the different. We talked the small uprising of the Maccabees. They returned to that land. So that land, Judah, has always been people of Judah, but outside of Israel as a whole, Dan, Issachar, all of those places, the people who would have been originally there are now scattered. The lost sheep. So let's continue to see how these sheep get lost, because right now we're going to see a king that's already started to divide those sheep up by saying, hey, for silver, I'll take Samaria. Well, that's Israel. You just bought a piece of Israel back from somebody else. You get what I'm saying? But it also shows why he was anointed. Because guess what? Who will always rule over Israel? A king, right? Because that's what they asked for. So if Israel people has to go into dispersion, guess who would have to be anointed to rule over those people? A king. And guess who got anointed back there by Elijah? And we said, why did God anoint Aram? Making sense now? Was the anointed king who was always going to rule over Israel just in their dispersion. Israel never stopped getting ruled over. They were just going through their chastising. This was what was coming because of what they had done. First, the king caused them to sin. Then the people sinned on their own because they had to make the decision. All right. So this battle is getting ready to go down. Jehoshaphat and Ahab is sitting there. And Jehoshaphat had great riches and esteem, right? Remember, Jehoshaphat did everything that was right in the land. So Jehoshaphat is being built up. And allied himself with Ahab by what? Marriage. Remember, we talked about how that relation was. So it's kind of like, oh, I can't really cut you off because you're family. And some years later, having went down to visit Ahab in Samaria, and Ahab made a great, slaughtering many sheep and cattle for him, or sacrificing many sheep and cattle for him, and people with them, and excited him to go up with him to Ramoth Gilead. And Ahab, king of Israel, said to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, this is acknowledgement, right? I'm acknowledging you as the king of Judah. Even though, yes, we are a separated kingdom, I acknowledge that now we have two kings. King of Judah, do you go with me against Ramoth Gilead? And he answered him, I am as you are, and my people as your people, even with you in battle. So he is now, even though he said, hey, because we're married, that could have been it, because it lined it up, right? It told us about the lineage, the marriage, but then we get to here and it says, because you're going to battle, I'm with you. Wherever you go, my people go, which means he just gave Ahab lineage to his army and a beef that Ahab already had. All right. This is what I wanted to show y'all, because it doesn't paint this picture unless you pull it from Kings to see how much Ahab has brought upon himself. And now Jehoshaphat, who was off doing something completely different, a whole different, as I say, in life quest. He has been brought a side quest, one that he doesn't have all the information for, but yet he's elected to go. And not only go, he said, my people will go as well. Now, we do know Ahab is covered by who? The Lord. The Lord. The Lord said, I found favor, and not Ahab, Jehoshaphat. The Lord found favor in Jehoshaphat. Ahab doesn't have any favor at all. In fact, Ahab has a death sentence hanging over his head. When they said the dogs was going to lick him up in the street, it did not say what time, day, nor hour. But it will happen. Which battle? Or which battle. So Ahab, this is me again. Ahab should have avoided all dogs. If anything in the kingdom, Ahab should have said, every dog in this kingdom dies. This is a kingdom of cats. Could have turned into Egypt real quick. Cats would have been on the wall as hieroglyphics. Next thing you know, everybody's like, wow, look at this kingdom. They worship cats. And all that became because somebody said you was going to die and eat dogs. That's just me. That's why I'm not in the Bible in this past time, because I'm here now to tell y'all that that's, hey, I would have got rid of every dog.
That's
what I'm saying, that's because you get what I'm saying? Because the difference between me and Ahab, I had faith in what God said. Ahab didn't. All I'm trying to point out to you is Ahab had no faith. And people say, well, how can you give me an example of Ahab not having faith? He didn't get rid of every dog. In fact,
he could only get rid of the dogs in his kingdom.
It don't matter.
No authority.
You know, one of the things I love Snow White, the movie. And Rumpelstiltskin. Do you know Rumpelstiltskin's mom? I mean, not Rumpelstiltskin, not Prince, whatever her name was, Princess, whatever her name, I can't remember. But the mom, the moment she heard the decree that her daughter would prick her finger on a needle, she got rid of every needle in the kingdom. The daughter left the kingdom and went and got her needle pricked. So you get what I'm saying? She had faith in whatever that prophecy was, and Ahab was like, no, it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to go get Jehoshaphat, because Jehoshaphat is good with God, and I can push through this war. Even though he must have missed the part where, I guess when he heard him say it's not going to happen in your time, it's going to happen to your kids, I guess he thought that was him and his death. Because remember, who did they also say it's not going to happen in your lifetime, but in your children's lifetime? Solomon, David. So when people hear that, going, it's not going to happen to me, I'm good. But look at what he does, because he still has an inkling that, hey, this war could get out of hand. So him and Jehoshaphat, they sat up there and they side. All right, wherever you questions. No, I'm moving fast here.
But if you notice, Jehovah says he had to first find out what God, the Lord had.
There it is. Now here's where Ahab and Jehoshaphat get to what I call, man, this guy's getting ready to find out how I truly feel about this, and maybe he might change his mind. So when he says, hey, this is not a bad thing for me to side with you, but I think we should ask a prophet. And that's because what we have learned about the prophets, they do what?
Message from the Lord.
The prophets brought the message for the Lord. But Ahab's prophets, we all know, are
Man-made.
man-made. So Ahab's prophets come out and they tell him what? You're going to go and get the victory. It is all yours. Congratulations. And Ahab's like, and what did Jehoshaphat say? I don't believe none of these bums. Get me a man of who?
God.
The Lord. So in other words, even though Ahab tried to bring his fake squad up there and make these prophecies, Jehoshaphat still wasn't sniffed them out. Get these bums out of here and get me a real prophet. And then what Ahab said, go ahead.
Their prophecy was correct. They just didn't tell all of it.
Well, if you don't tell it all, it's not correct. Because if it was correct, it would have been a second. It would have been a second call, right?
The result was the same. He just didn't know all of the prophecy.
Okay.
Half truth is a lie.
That
I get what you're saying.
half truth is a half truth.
I get what you're saying.
Right?
I get what you're saying. It was the truth that the victory would be theirs.
Exactly.
Got it. The truth is, but this is the thing. We got to remember who was inquiring of the prophecy. Jehoshaphat, right? He was the one inquiring of the prophecy, and Ahab brought him his prophets. That's all I'm pointing out. Ahab brought him his prophets. Here's my prophets. And that's not what Jehoshaphat wanted. Jehoshaphat wanted to know about, his alliance. Who am I aligning with? And what is the success of our alliance? Remember, if you're aligning with the king, yeah, I can win all day. But what is the point of me winning with you if we still lose? Because what happens in this war? Jehoshaphat won, but Ahab lost. A death of a king is still the death of a kingdom. You get what I'm going with this? So when this prophecy came, Ahab heard that, but Jehoshaphat didn't hear anything collective. He heard what you heard, an individual victory. But that's how he knew it wasn't true, because I'm not going out here by myself. I need a prophet of the Lord, because these ones aren't giving me what you said, the whole truth. He knew that it was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. And when the whole truth came out, it needed to come from what?
Prophet from the Lord.
Prophet of the Lord, because the Lord is going to tell you everything about this battle. And what did Ahab say? I don't like them because I'm using his past words, not his present words. He said but I want you to remember what he said. Because don't like you sounds like Ahab, like he kind of toned it down for Jehoshaphat. He really toned it down for Jehoshaphat. But what did he say in the past about them? They what?
Hate me.
Okay. It's often been said in here doing service, Bible studies, teaching, even some conversation, that man that is an enemy of God hates God, right? That's what Scripture tells. So Jehoshaphat is a man who he doesn't hate God, he's with God, right? Because obviously the prophet came and he told him the true prophecy. But Ahab hates God. So what he's truly saying is whatever word that comes from God, I hate it because it's always against me. Because every time God speaks, he's against me and he's telling me of the things that I did. And now when he speaks, he tells me of the consequences from the things that I did. The biggest problem is, how does God know I'm doing all these things? Ahab never asked himself this question. Remember, let's recap Ahab. I mean, Jezebel, God, a man of God show up, hey, he did this. Taking a yard, a man of God show up to do this. He tried to do something, it's just a constant recurrence that someone from God is always telling Ahab what he's doing. That's the thing he hates. The fact that his sin keeps coming up before him. Now go to the New Testament. Sin is most of the time in the Testament is what? Injuries, possessions, death. Right? So when this time comes, Ahab's sin is now leading him into death. He knows it. What more could you tell me after you just told me that the dogs are gonna lick my blood up? Anything you say is not gonna be good for me. So let's see what they say.
He sees us with the prophet, but there he's up with God. So the prophecy is more than telling you.
That's who he truly hates. It's not that he hates. The prophet himself is just what he can physically put his finger on. What did Jezebel say when she finds out all these prophecies against him? Kill him, because that's the only thing she can think physically. If I get rid of Elijah, this won't happen to Ahab. They see only the physical thing, but what Ahab really understands is this isn't a war between physical people. If that was the case, I would have killed them too. This is someone attacking my sinful spirit every time he sees it.
This is somebody said because if the prophet will tell him you're going to die, and that word came from the Lord. If you kill the prophet, that word is still going forward.
Still going forward.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop.
No, they just been prophesied.
But Jezebel and Ahab in their line believe that any bad prophecy, if I kill it,
You kill the prophet.
I kill the prophecy. Right, but us in this room understand how it works. We see that Ahab's misunderstanding and misfortune of what actually it's not a misunderstanding, misfortune. It led to good things on my behalf. So keep going, Ahab.
And he appointed all of his prophets to tell him what he wanted to hear.
But
That should have been some kind of clue right there too.
And Jehoshaphat is probably fully aware that these prophets come where? Bars and brothels, people off the streets. Remember, when he couldn't get prophets from the proper place in Jerusalem, try saying that 3 times fast. When he couldn't get those prophets, what happened? He just start grabbing anybody off the street and say, man, why don't you come on in the church and say whatever you want. In fact, I'm going to build up this thing, and you want to have women sleeping right here on the steps, go for it. You want to do whatever you want. This is what he did. He grabbed everybody up. Now, remember when I said a lot of these things I was going to talk about going to other scriptures. All right. Let's see. I think this would probably be a good time to insert. To talk about some of these things that were happening to Ahab and the other kings, but via the prophets. All right. Some of the things that were all right, so we ain't got to get the prophets yet, and I was ready to kind of spill the beans about some of those people they call minor prophets. Y'all hear those stories? The reason why they say minor prophets because a lot of people will classify them as shorter than the majors. They didn't really involve themselves with the king because a lot of people would have missed the fact. They would say those minor prophets, some of them, they didn't go out to kings, did they? They went out to cities. But what we know about Aram and some of the things that were happening in Assyria actually being the ultimately conquest of Israel and some of the lands that they went to, and those kings being in those positions by God leading them there for Israel's captivity, those kings were rulers. So when these people will go out to their nations, or as Israel was falling apart, these were the things that they were talking about. So as you read the 12 prophets, right, look at their text as they're dealing with the cities. one of the time, and I'm kind of, like I said, I'm getting kind of ahead because as we get ready to get past Ahab, a lot of this King's gonna speed up, and it's gonna be a lot of different things. But when we look at what's getting ready to happen, the prophets are already kind of being selected. This isn't something that's happenstance, like, oh, well, because Israel's going to fall, now I need to go and find me prophets. These are people that's in the land. They're watching their people go away in conquest. Where did Jonah come from? Where was Jonah at the time? He had to come from somewhere to go somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. So it's saying that, and Jonah was Jonah a Jew?
No.
He lived in the land?
Yes.
Jonah wasn't a Jew. I don't know. I'm asking. We ain't in Jonah. I'm just asking questions for thought provoking. Jonah was a Jew, right? And he went to where? Nineveh. And Nineveh was would have been what land? Assyria, right? Yeah. So Jonah would have went to Nineveh to preach to the lost sheep. So when you read Jonah, when we get there, probably gonna take some things from Jonah. Now we might see Jonah a little different because Jonah is not just having to go and prophesy, which we know that was the mission that was supposed to be done. But we also can see a little bit of internal fear when Jonah is saying, you want me to go where? To do what? For people who don't deserve it? What they deserve it for? Because sometimes internally, it could be saying, hey, I might be scared to go over there and get killed. Hosea, hey, Israel has already went to Ruts. But what I want you to do is go find somebody else that look like Israel. You see where these stories go? When you read them, it sounds like that they just grabbed 12 people, like God was just walking and just wanted to just say, you know what, today I'm just going to take 12 random people and throw their day into chaos. I say this to say, as we get a little bit further, we're going to start bringing the prophets in. So if y'all, I know keeping up with the Kings and Chronicles is fast, but when we start adding the prophets, it might get a little faster. And we may start touching other things that we have. A little bit of Daniel here, not too much. But we also may get into some of the books of the prayers, the Lamentations, because all of that pretty much takes place as Jerusalem is falling, even into Jeremiah. So if you haven't read Jeremiah, skim over it. Take some time with it. I know I'm mentioning all the books. All right, let's get back to Ahab and Jehoshaphat. So now these two are sitting here. Jehoshaphat has already agreed to do it. He said, my people, your people in battle. And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, please inquire the word of the Lord today. And he asked this. And the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, 400 men, and said to them, do we go up against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or do I refrain? And they said, go up, for God does give it into the king's hands. Very, very vague. That is the truth. Very vague. Because remember, what did I say that Ahab acknowledged Jehoshaphat as when he came up? My king. So this prophecy, like Eric said, it's not a true prophecy, but it would have just been for one king. So this is the prompt. Wait a minute. This doesn't say about the whole battle. It says king, like it's two kings here. We both, Jehoshaphat never said that Israel was mine, even though Ahab tried to put Israel in. You see how it goes? This is the thing that Ahab is doing to Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat is either aware or not paying attention to it. Now, I would say he wasn't aware, or he did it with awareness, because as we get later, we will see that maybe he was aware. All right, let's continue. And the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, 400 men, and said, do we go up against Ramoth Gilead? They said, go up, for God does give it into the king's hand in battle. But Jehoshaphat said, is there not still a prophet of the Lord here? Wait a minute. Didn't we just bring a bunch of people on the Lord? What make you think that these ones ain't it? Ain't the real thing. Right. It's, it was a commercial back in like the 90s, and it's like people pick up the drink and they're like, this is, and they'll put it down and they'll grab like a Pepsi, like, this is the right choice. It's kind of like this. Jehoshaphat knew that was not the right choice. He knew that was Coca-Cola, not Pepsi, or vice versa, Pepsi, not Coca-Cola. But he just knew that wasn't the prophet he needed to talk to on that day. So he hung that phone up real quick and said, make another call. Jehoshaphat, is there still not a prophet of the Lord here? Huh? So that we are acquired. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, now here's more deception. There's still one man to inquire of the Lord from him. Listen. Hate.
It's a strong word.
It's a strong word. And you know, when we think about it, like it just says him, right? This man again, I hate him. That him has been so many hymns. You hate them all. Which one him? I think about Jehoshaphat. I said, man, you hate them all. You just brought 400 out here, and they said, but the one that I'm gonna get, you hate him, and all the people like him. Why? What makes him so hateable?
He's trying to influence Jehoshaphat too.
Oh, he definitely is.
It's deception going on, but he's trying to influence him also.
This is exactly, if you go back and you look over history, and I'm not no big historian, but you go back and look over history, a lot of the historians going war, what they would do is they would manipulate their war councils. They would say, hey, if I move a little bit like this, will you move a little bit like that? Of course, that sounds great. And they would get, like, when I looked at the astonishing number of how many people Napoleon Bonaparte moved on the table that actually led to the physical death of other human beings, it's crazy. If you feel like you want to see the amount of number, the astronomical number that one man costs the lives of people to disappear on the earth just by moving a peg here. And, I want to take cannons here and aim them there. 20,000 people gone. Remember when I talked about the game Risk? That's what the game was about. All right. So Ahab is now he's trying to pull these strings. He's trying to get this party started. This fight that he's already kind of a little bit already in, right? Jehoshaphat, are you not aware? Like sometimes I was the people in the room, hey, Jehoshaphat, that idiot again. He over there, hey man, you sure you want to go fight with this guy? He just got beat up the other day. He lost half his city. All right, I get it. I'm telling you, I've been in a world of trouble. All right, so Jehoshaphat now has a decision to make. He wants to hear from the true man of God. But Ahab hates it. Ahab doesn't want to hear it because this man never says anything good. Always evil. So he is like Micaiah, the son of Yemili. And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. Don't say bad things. So the king of Israel called one of his officers and says, bring Micaiah, son of Yemili, at once. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, dressed in their robes, sat each on a throne. And they sat at the threshing floor at the entrance of the gate of Samaria. And all the prophets were prophesying before them. And Zedekiah, son of Gotcha, thank you. Had made a horn of iron for himself and said, thus said the Lord, with these you push the Armenians until they are destroyed. And all the prophets were prophesying, saying, so go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, and the Lord shall give it into your hand in the hands of the sovereign. Again, no identification of what sovereign they're going to give it into. Why is this important?
Couple of different reasons. I mean, here's some more deception going on here because it says here specifically that they both have their robes right? Mm-hmm. But Ahab's going to try to trick again.
Oh, wait, we ain't got there yet. No. My question is, right now, why is this important? I want y'all to step away with me right now. It's two kings talking about a battle, a specific land, Gilead, Ramoth, right? Ramoth, Gilead. This land is indicating like a two connecting states, so forth and so on, right? Why is it important that they keep saying the sovereign's hand?
Which one? Which one's going to take it?
There.
Whoever the king in the field.
There you go. Now you see that this deception is also like, if we go out in battle and they don't see me, they think you're fighting. And if you're fighting and you win the land, well, look, I'm telling you by marriage. I get land that was already in my land and I ain't have to do it. I didn't lose anything. I didn't have to put myself in the middle of it. Jehoshaphat was the one out there that came on the battlefield. I say this because if you go and look later on in conquest, the kings used to actually be getting it on the battlefield. They didn't just, remember what David said? In the day they took them on the battlefield. Well, in this time frame, it was still other kingdoms around. And what they would do is they would saddle up and they would go up to the line and they would have all their people and they would get out there and they would get busy with the people that was fighting. So to send a king out there, the sovereign, with the king that's going to get this land when it's all said and done. If you go out here with me, it's going to be in the king's hand. You see what I'm saying? This is not just something that Ahab is plotting. Ahab is masterminding this. We all now remember last week when I said Ahab always run home. Jezebel, I gotta do this. Jezebel, you see what I'm saying? But Ahab got a little bit of, I ain't have to ask Jezebel this one. I figured it out. You know, he got some plotting of his own. Ahab said, I could come up with this one on the spot. I got him. So now the next phase, I got his army. I got his men. I got him ready to go into battle. Shoot, I don't want to go. How do I do this? This is the tricky part. Because guess what the prophets have been saying? Now, I watched this movie with Will Smith. It's called Focus. Is it Focus? Oh man. Ain't that where they would gamble and he was going around?
Yeah.
So I want y'all to understand that I'm not saying that this is this, but what I'm saying is it's been several subtle hints. And I kept saying it. The king. It's going to be put into the king's hand. Hey, and what are the prophets saying? It's going to go to the king. Well, what they do? Ahab has a plan. Why don't I make you the king today? Because guess what you've heard 50 times by false prophets? The king is done. The king is going to win. So if you just made me the king, I'm going to win today. And this is where Jehoshaphat lost his actual process to think. Because he's like, that's a great idea. All right, let's get into it. I got about 10 more minutes. So after all these false prophets come up prophesying and say, yeah, you go, Micaiah finally steps up. And the messenger who had gone to call Micaiah spoke to him, saying, see, the word of the prophet is with one mouth, are good towards the king. No S, king. So please, you see how many times king has been said? And this one time, I think it's going to be said some more. The king, singular. So please let your words be like one of them with all you speak. God said, okay, you asked for it. As the Lord lives, whatever my God says that I speak. And he came to the king and said, the king said to him, Micaiah, do we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or do I refrain? I want y'all to listen to what it says right here.
And he said,
listen, who said? And he said, not the Lord, he said, and he said, go and prosper. And they gave him into your hand, and they are given into your hands. And the king said to him, how many times have I made you swear that you do not speak to me except the truth in the name of the Lord? Okay. So now you actually see that Jehoshaphat, or is this Ahab talking to him? Because Ahab don't even like talking to the prophets. So this is Jehoshaphat. So Micaiah actually has a problem. What's Micaiah's problem? This ain't the first time he did it either. So I would say this conversation he's having it with is with who? Not Jehoshaphat. It's Ahab. Because that's who sent for him. And when he came there, Ahab said, tell me only good things when you get here. Don't come here telling me this bad stuff. And Micaiah got there knowing that he was going to get hit. Like he gets punched. Knowing that when he got there, he's going to be like, Ahab, you're going to win. You see what I'm saying? And then Ahab like, man, you said that yourself. Tell me what the Lord says. And this is what Micaiah says when he's asked. He says, and the king said, oh, hold on. This is 16. So he said, I saw all of Israel scattered on the mountain as sheep, so that they have no shepherd. You get where we going now? Remember them lost shepherds are so scattered so many years in the future? Here we go. This was the one that's saying Israel's going to be scattered. They're going to be scattered on the mountains as the sheep have no shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master. Let each return to his house in peace. So this is the prophecy. They wouldn't have anybody, but they still would have a home to return to, which we see. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, did I not say to you that he would not prophesy good concerning who? Me. All of these other prophets, they seemed like they was going towards who? Ahab, right? So now I got to think about this line of question. Was it Jehoshaphat not, was Jehoshaphat just saying, hey, these prophecies don't sound right, get more? Did he want a second opinion? Or did he realize what was being said wasn't something that was being said by somebody who was an honest prophet? So if he was saying all these things, maybe it wasn't Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was just a button that every time something came up and say, hey, I don't know about that one. Can you get another prophet? You got 400 of them right here.
You mean Ahab?
I mean, what I'm saying is the question, Ahab would call the prophets.
Right.
Jehoshaphat would question that.
Right.
And say, is it not Jehoshaphat wasn't the one that the prophecy was being given into the hands of? Now it's truly unfolding. I want y'all to understand the conversation before just kept saying king, 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 king. Good to the king, great to the king, win the battle of the king. But now it's very specific. And Ahab knows that it's directed at who?
Him.
So Jehoshaphat is not worried about the prophet. But Jehoshaphat wanted to make sure we got an honest answer for this thing that we're about to get into. So I want you to say it, I want to say it again. Is Jehoshaphat aware of what's going on?
Yes.
By everything that we just put together, he's fully aware that he knows that Ahab is in some kind of smoke. So Jehoshaphat is not unaware, but he's willingly going with it. He's willingly going with a person that he knows whose kingdom is totally defiled. I just wanted to point it out because it sounds like everything is the king here, the king here, the king here, but now we see exactly what king is talking about. So it could have been flattering to Jehoshaphat until we got to the very end. Who's going to lose the battle? Because Jehoshaphat did not take that personally. Who took it personal? Ahab. Why did Ahab take it personal? Because Ahab was the one that came up there to start the fight in the first place. So of course he took it personal when he found out that I'm going to lose the fight, that I'm trying to win secretly. Man, this guy's a bum. Slap him, punch him, get him out of here. I think that's the next thing they did. And the king Ahab said that, and then he said, therefore, hear the words of the Lord. I saw sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing on his right and his left. Now, I believe one of the Sundays we talked about the right and the left. Not going to get, well, I got a couple minutes. We talked about the right and the left. Now, I want you to understand that this is who's seeing this. Who's seeing this seating of the Lord?
Yeah.
Michael, right? So he's seeing this. He's describing something that they would not have understood. This would have been new to them. Well, not new to Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat would have been like, yep, this is a prophecy. I know what you're talking about. Because you're describing the heavenly host. But what he's also describing is missions that they get, right? Because we are going to see here that the heavenly hosts are sitting there talking with the Lord. Now, and he said, therefore, the word of the Lord. And he said, I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all of the hosts of the heavens standing in his right and on his left. Right is for goodness, mercy. And left is for or, in this case, whatever God wants to be done that is going to, for this mission. You get what I'm saying? You'll hear people say, well, God wouldn't do that. Well, listen to this. This is a king making a decision based on his information. So then he said, therefore, the word of the Lord sitting on the throne, and the people took the messengers was to his heavenly host was to his right and left. And the Lord said, who shall entice Ahab? This was a question from the Lord. Who's going to go entice Ahab's prophets, right? Because that's who they were going to go entice. He said, who shall go up, the Ahab sovereign of Israel, the king of Israel, to go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said, and the other one said this, and the other said that. And now what came forward? Spirit. A spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, let me entice him. And this is what the Lord says. The Lord said to him, in what way? And he said, I shall go out and be of a spirit of falsehood in the mouth of all of his prophets. And he said, entice him and also prevail. Go out and do so. Now you'll hear comments. You'll hear people going down roads and say, God doesn't do this. God doesn't do that. Well, we see that this right here is a sovereign king that hands out orders to go and do whatever is needed for the progression of the kingdom. Some would say, well, the Lord is enticing people to do evil.
No.
Do you want me to? You want me to? I'm not. I wouldn't say that I'm going. It's an order. It's not the goodness of the Lord doesn't change because something has to be done that looks evil in our eyes. Because we would say evil. To entice Ahab is evil, right? Because that's how the Lord described it for our understanding. But anybody in here think that Ahab's prophets? Right. So why are we calling it evil? We only call it evil because that's what the scripture said. But this was for the good. If Ahab's prophets would have kept going in the line that they was going, right? We don't know Ahab. So he sent them out with a false prophecy to do what? Put it into who? So it's not that it's evil. It had to be done because it was talked about when. Was it evil when he said he was going to be locked up in the street with a dog? Nobody said that what's the Lord is going to do evil. Nobody said that, right? That still had to be done some way. We thought it was going to be magic that was going to be done. He's showing you how it's going to be done. I'm going to do this to them. It doesn't make him evil. It's what had to be done for an evil person. And this was the way in the world that he was going to do it.
Something like when God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
People take things of the scriptures because how we know it. And they want to associate it to the things in our hearts. What is evil according to us, good according to us. It's not our standard of what's being said. I wanted to give you this before I kind of close. Actually, I'm going to close. I wanted to give you this to say, people will come in conversation and say, well, the Lord is evil because he sends people to do evil things. No. You're categorizing the action, missing the prophecy given to someone who had already did evil to the Lord. In fact, Ahab said he hates the Lord. I celebrate what the Lord did in this moment. I wish he would have done more. Do you get what I'm saying? I do not look at what was done as evil because I understand the process behind it. So I say this because a lot of people go here and try to trip believers up and say the Lord is evil with this text. I want to tell you, they say that because they probably haven't read what Ahab did before. It's almost like me coming home with a bunch of F's and then having the audacity to call my mother evil for whooping my butt for each one of those chicken feet on my report card. True story.
The teacher being mean.
And my teacher being mean. You get where I'm going? So I wanted to point that out here as I close, so we can have a better understanding of the sovereign king that we serve. It's not an evil thing. It's what he said he was going to do. So,
as I mentioned before, as we go forward in the study, we're going to see a shift. All right, we're going to start seeing a shift from what we see now as the conversation about the kings to more so we're going to see prophets in action. So with that being said, I don't want to leave out Elijah because it'll be difficult to talk about things going forward if we didn't really talk about Elijah, because we're about to meet who? We already met Elijah. We're about to meet Elisha. It's one of the ones that get you tough. And the only reason I say that is because these two books, as we talk about it, especially when we get ready to go into 2 Kings, it's going to be a lot of things that now, as we learn from the scriptures, that God is talking to them, but not like he used to in the old. Remember, he dealt with the kings. He spoke with David. Now we're seeing this conversation to become more from the prophets. All right, we're going to talk about, maybe we get to it. We might talk a little bit about Jehu, right? Anybody remember who Jehu is? He was one of them guys way back when in one of the other chapters that talked to prophecy, and now we see him again. All right. Now, the thing about Jehu was prophesizing in what kingdom? So Jehu was up in the northern tribe, which means if he had some prophesizing to do towards the northern tribe, which means the northern tribe did what? It always seemed like the prophets, when they came like, hey, I got some follow-up to tell you about.
Bad news, right?
Some bad news, right? I guess Micaiah, after getting slapped in the face, wait, we ain't get there yet. Or we did. We kind of told a story about Micaiah and how he came, right, and he got slapped. But we didn't talk about some of the things Micaiah said. Now, notice I'm switching the shift here from prophets, but I'm not done with these kings. I'm just giving you the rev up for the shift. All right? So we have Elijah, Elisha, Jehu, who else? Micah, a couple other unnamed prophets. But before we get into this, right, because we're getting ready to close out on whose life here? Ahab. Now, did y'all read ahead? So when Ahab, okay, what's the last thing they say about Ahab? Like after he died, skip it. We're gonna go back. We already know he's gonna die, so I'm not cutting off anything. When Ahab dies, and they talk about in this chapter 22, what do they say that Ahab did? Evil in God's eye. But it was something else that Ahab, he built something. So Ahab, right? When he dies, it says that what was his legacy, some things he left behind. They didn't talk so much about, like, we know that he was a wicked king, but they talked about things that Ahab left behind. It was something very particular that would have been kind of just really quick in thought. It says something about like an ivory temple, right? All right, so keep that in mind when we get ready to talk about Ahab and his ivory temple. But I also want to let you know what's getting ready to come to Israel through prophecy. All right, so Amos. Amos was a prophet in those days. He was I'm reading from here, he was a shepherd, right? A herdsman. He was snatched out and he was told to give prophecy. He gave several prophecies in several places. And you don't have to go to Amos, but in Amos 3, summarizing it up real quick here, and I may read some of it, I may even read all of it, but you don't have to follow me there. But Amos starts this particular prophecy against a certain place. Now I want you to take into account what he's saying. Hear the words of God has spoken against you, O children of Israel, the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Egypt. So now when he's referring to Israel as a whole, is he including Judah and Israel, the other tribes that had disconnected from it? All Israel. So this prophecy right here should be for all Israel. And that's what I thought as I was studying. I said, yes, what did all of Israel do? Because I had just read that Jehu, I'm getting a little ahead of myself for those who catching up, because we're going to hit this fast forward button and get to right where we're at. Jehu is going to come prophesy against Judah. So I'm reading this, and I'm like, yeah, this is all about the whole collective, until I kept reading more. I'm showing you how these minor prophets were not minor at all, because they were speaking majorly to the people and the kings. O children of Israel, against the entire clan which I brought up from the land of Egypt. So that is the whole. That would have me in there. You alone have I known of all the clans in the entire earth. Therefore I punish you for all the crookedness. Wait a minute. How is he punishing Judah? Judah's good. They didn't do anything. So when we say all of Israel, it made me think. Right now, reading, Judah would have been in a good standing. They shouldn't be receiving punishment. So I continue to read on in Amos. And he says, how would two walk together without having met? It made me think about some of the questions. How can you not know me if we have walked together? He's asking this of Israel because they've been together so long. All right, he says, does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion give forth his voice out of the den unless he has caught? Does a bird fall into the snare of the earth? So God is asking Israel, like, we've been together and you still don't understand these things. And then I started to say, this sounds very specific, very direct, very to the point of people that had turned away and not acknowledged him. Right. So when he spoke of Israel, it made me think, what part of Israel are you talking about? He continues on about the lion, and God's telling them more. For the master, for the Lord God does no matter unless he reveals his secrets to his servants and prophets. Wait, we go back here and we see that who in the old text, when they're really dealing with this, is really getting like the education of the prophets up to this far. Is it Judah or is it Israel? When I say education, I say meaning the correction, the education to turn before it's too late. Who's getting that? Israel. So I go on more. What I'm trying to say is these prophets, they locked in a lot of information, because Amos was not just prophesizing to one person. If I was read before the other chapters, he had prophets Moab. He prophesied to quite a few other people that we're getting ready to start to see. I'm taking you to Amos because Amos is pointing out something that's happened later, but it was directly to a certain group of people, a certain group that were already falling. All right. The lion has roared, he has spoken, cries out in a loud place, and the Ashdod and the palace of Egypt say, gather on the mountains of where? What mountain is he saying that? So now we have a location, specific. We have specific locations of people he's talking to. So this is the conversation to who? It sound like the North, right? Now, I don't want to leave you like that to just speculate. How does it sound like the North? Well, you hear a lot of stuff they're doing. It goes on, says, and see the many unrest in her midst, the oppressed ones within her. But they do not know to do what is right, declares the Lord. So why would Israel be in a state of not knowing what to do is right? What is happening? Well, couldn't have been over there with Jehoshaphat and Judah because Judah was teaching. If I go back here and read in the Kings, it says Jehoshaphat eventually got his act together, goes throughout the lands, changes everything, tears everything, tells his mom, none of that gonna fly. He was considered righteous. So let's continue on. Said they don't know what to do, right? Declares the Lord. These who store up plunder and loot in their place. Therefore, thus said the Lord God, an enemy, even all around the lands, and he shall bring down your strength from you, your place, and your palaces shall be plundered. Thus said the Lord, as a shepherd rescues from the mouth of a lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear. Wow, so are the children of Israel who dwell where? Samaria. So this message is for who? Very particular. So even though he had multiple prophecies, this herdsman was given prophecies towards a very specific place, actually towards a king, because in the talking of this is now towards the people, but this is the results of this faulty kingship, the idols being built in the land, the things that have kind of went away. Now we see that the Lord has made a declaration, and we had to go to Amos to see it. Well, it gotta be more to point out. You know, I got the capital, I got the things that's going on here. I got that there are a tribe of lost sheep, and that the shepherd is telling them this is going to happen. Just as the shepherd rescued from the mouth of a lion, he said, 13, hear and witness against the house of Jacob. Well, that sounds like all of them. Declares the master, the Lord God. The Lord, oh, I got to read this. I got to figure out how to say this. Okay. Yeah, that y'all, I'm trying to translate here. Master, yeah, I'm just going to let y'all know what the end of that one say. Because I got a whole completely different sentence here. All right. For the day I visit Israel, for their transgression, I shall punish concerning the slaughter place or the sacrificial places of Bethel, and the horns of the sacrificial places shall be broken, and it shall fall to the ground. And I shall strike the winter house along with the summer house. Okay, that means he had different places to stay. But here's how the very specific. In the house of what? So who built the house of ivory? Now, you see this minor prophet wasn't giving out a minor prophecy. He was prophesying the destruction of Israel all the way down to what Ahab had believed was a monument in Israel, an ivory house. Now let's get back to Ahab and his craftiness and see how all of that ends up to what Amos just said. Now we're going to be bouncing in some of the prophets. I told you that this was going to happen. We were going to go see what they had to say about these kings, because guess who the prophets would have been? Who would they have been in the land of Israel? The herdsmen. I'm sorry. Who would the herdsmen have been in this community? Who would the herdsmen have been? People. The people that lived there, that worked there. Like, these are the things you're doing to the land. I, as a herdsman, and I had to go look it up. So in these cultures, when the land would, because herdsmen also worked the farm, they also worked the land. When things got bad, you know what the farmers did when the lands got bad? You know what they turned into instead of farmers? Not shepherds. Professional weepers. They would bring the women out, and they would bring out professional women to cry and lament. But the men of the farm who were seeing the destruction of the land would have came out and said these things out in the open. Look at what you're doing to us. No longer do I want to be a farmer, because nothing I have in the land produces any fruit. I would rather weep all day than farm a land that I know is not producing, because of the torment that y'all doing, of the things you're doing away from God. You see what I'm saying? Because what else was happening in this land? If the herdsmen were struggling or having problems, well, Elijah did what? Wasn't Elijah, didn't he, what did he do? He made what? I know we didn't talk about Elijah, but didn't y'all go back and read, like we've heard the story. What did Elijah do to the land for umpteen years? He shut the land up. He said no rain. So now you see why these herdsmen, why these people are starting to speak, why the Lord has given them these prophecies, because look at what it's doing to the land. The people should stop celebrating in a land where the fruits aren't being gathered, right? And they should become professional mourners to see the things that are happening around them. How can I grow crops in a place where I know is desolate? You get what I'm saying? Now you see why Amos is just preaching destruction for things that shouldn't be destroyed. A summer house, a winter house, the ivory house, things that we should see right now because we keep pyramids and we keep monuments and hieroglyphics of everything else. And when Amos said, your ivory house, your summer house that you built as a king will no longer be there. Anybody know where this ivory house is to this day? Thus said the Lord. I'm just saying this is what the scriptures say. So you see these things. All right. So with all that being said, now we know the status of the land. Let's look into what the kings do, how they react. So the last thing we had two kings sitting outside of each other in a procession, right? They got their royal court. Some ideas are being passed about as to, hey, we're going to go out here and we're going to go into this battle. And when we go into this battle, as we get into this fight, I need you to do something for me. This is Ahab to Jehoshaphat. Because Ahab has already did what to Jehoshaphat?
He went up and solicited his aid, his help.
His help. Why? Now, we got to say this very plain and very clear. Why did Ahab go to Jehoshaphat?
Because he has God's faith.
That's it. Both of those answers are 100% right. Ahab went up to Jehoshaphat for no other reason because Judah was favored by the Lord. Period. He knew if I took this guy out here with me, this is a W. This is where we win. This is where things pan off for me. All right. So now Ahab has hatched plan A of plan B. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but it does to me. Just stay with me. So in the midst of Ahab's planning, he says, now it's time to go with plan B. Now, do we think Jehoshaphat is a fool? We've already seen the prophecy that was given, right, to a point where the guy slapped Micaiah and was like, tell me where the spirit come from that. And Micaiah was like, you won't make it. Ha ha. Piece of, you kind of get, I'm paraphrasing here. We're going to get to some of this stuff. But as we see, plan B is in the scheme. So who read ahead? What's plan B?
Now this
is the second time, right? Ahab is either always trying to disguise somebody or somebody like this side of the kingdom is always trying to play the disguise game as if no one's going to know. Or should I say, in this sense, they're playing the disguise game because they think who won't know. Let's track. Let's look at what Ahab said. 22:25, right? Yes.
Talk about also prophecy about the dogs licking the blood up for 1 day.
No, we're gonna leave that one out for a little while. We'll get to it. Thanks for asking though. No, I'm just messing with you. So we see, right? We see Micaiah, right? And Micaiah is telling them about what? Things to come. Because these other group of prophets, they did what? They lied. They told them, hey, everything gonna be great. So Micaiah is telling them. All right. So just in quick and talking. All right, now we know this battlefield, this thing that's getting ready to go down, right? There was a prophecy. What was a prophecy to Ahab? What was going to happen to Ahab? He's going to die. He's going to die, and in the course of his death, the dogs are going to lick his blood in the streets. Now, Ahab, we talked about some of the reason why he's trying to be deceptive. And I said this earlier. His reason for being deceptive is who is he trying to deceive? Thank you. Jehoshaphat is a man. Remember, in all of these things where we have these conversations, the flesh is always going to be present and easily to assign. But we know that these people who are whatever capacity they may stand in, Jehoshaphat now stands in the capacity of a king that is what? Righteous in the eyes of God. And if Jehoshaphat is standing in the eyes of God, that means he's standing with God. That's the reason why Ahab went. So when I say, who is Ahab trying to deceive? Jehoshaphat is just, and when I say a pawn, I don't want us to think like loose status. I want to understand that Jehoshaphat is being moved on the boards of a timeline that we don't fully understand. Jehoshaphat was being moved the same way that Joseph was being moved when he came up from Egypt. The same way that the entire tribe was being moved when they went into Egypt. The same, you get where I'm saying here? I'm not saying they're pawns. What I'm saying is they were pieces on the board that led to our timeline. This is the timeline we're in. We can't get out of it. Wherever you have been put in this timeline. So Jehoshaphat was a representative of a holy king. God was with him. Ahab knew that. So when you hear these things, and I want you to always think about spiritual when you look at it, Ahab wasn't trying to really deceive Jehoshaphat.
He knew that the opposing was going to kill a king. So Ahab told Jehoshaphat, put your robes on. Mm-hmm. Ahab didn't put his robe on.
Right. But who?
Trying to see God.
Of course he was trying to see
that is what we ultimately should always see when these interactions come up. We see the wicked trying to deceive a righteous person, but Ahab wasn't trying to. Approve it. I would prove Ahab was trying to deceive God because we know that Jehu came back and said what? You sided with somebody who hates God. Sir?
Saying, if you look at Ananias' father when he came in and lied, and as far as Ananias' father was concerned, they lied to the men, but they turned around and told him, you have not lied unto us, but you lied to God.
And that's understood. That's understood. Because, and that's why I say that. That's understood. But I don't think that Ahab thought he was going to trick God. Ahab hated God, but everything that God said, Ahab came to pass.
Yeah,
correct.
Get your point, but then, and that's where the deceiver is. He only sees what's in front of him. Okay, but the prophets, saw the big scheme. Okay, these men, that's why I use Ananias' fire. These men who Ananias' fire lied to know that she only saw what was in front of them. So in her head, she was deceiving them, but they corrected her. We're here standing on God's behalf.
Right.
So as you think you're doing to us, you're actually doing to God.
So even though Jehoshaphat in this battle that is in front of us is laid out the way you're saying, this is not to discredit it, but you have to realize who the true enemy is. In fact, he didn't go to Ahab. Of course, Ahab was dead, so he couldn't go to him. But he went to Jehoshaphat. And I think if Ahab would have still been alive, eventually the same things would have happened to him, which was prophesied, which was the blood being licked up by the dogs. But what you have to realize is this: Jehoshaphat was the one that got chastised by the Lord. Did he not? He did. So I'm not discrediting anything past the chastising. What I'm saying is Jehoshaphat was the one that took the blunt of what happened. Jehu came to him and said, what? But let's finish with these two, because Ahab's deception is very, very crafty. They did want a king on the battlefield. Jehoshaphat being I can't remember which one was the younger or the older, which does come into play. Remember, younger king, older king. But in this particular thing, you have two kings who showed up in procession, full procession. One king suggests to the other king after hearing a prophecy of defeat. Now, I want you to stay with this because Jehoshaphat is there hearing all of this. And yet he still went along with it because Ahab's deception wasn't to deceive Jehoshaphat. He was just a player. Now, I'm not saying that he deceived God, because exactly what God said happened to Ahab, and Jehoshaphat still went through with it and was protected for the most part in all of it. All right. So now Micaiah, right? I'm back at 25 here. And Micaiah said, look, you shall see on that day you go into the inner room to hide. That's after he slapped him. Because the guy, Zedekiah, son of Caniah, came near and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, where did the Spirit of the Lord pass over from me to speak to you? Meaning, when God tell me to come up and slap you in the face? And Micaiah replied and said, look, you shall see on the day when you go into the inner room to hide. Keep these things in mind. And the king of Israel said, now who's telling them this? What king? Very specific. All right, I keep going back because I don't want you to understand. These are going to become conversations between kings. The king of Israel said, hey, take him away, take him to Oman, put him in prison, give him the bread and water of the afflicted. Now, the bread and water of afflicted was just basically flat bread, no wheat. It was just the grain, some water, and they tossed it in there. Just tossed it in there. And the water of the afflicted was just exactly what it said, water. Sometimes it might be a little bit of vinegar in it. Whatever they could put in the water casterns of dirty water casterns, they would just give it to you. It was the water in prison that did not mean it was clean. I say it to say is Micaiah's been beat and thrown in prison just for doing exactly what they asked him to do. Prophesize. But because they wanted a good prophecy, they struggled. Where did this prophecy of deceit come from? God said, hey, which one of y'all gonna go? Because they need a prophecy of deceptions. Deceive their prophets. Put lying prophecies in their mouth because they are for destruction. Why would he put a truth in a prophet's mouth so that the kingdom that's for destruction would actually know the truth? It's not for them. He didn't want them. But when they told him the truth, look, it wasn't that God didn't want them to know the truth. They didn't want to hear it. Now, I remember I think the first thing I ever taught here was on a Sunday was Romans, right? And it talked about in Romans 17 about how God will give them over to their desires. Now we know that's talking about idolatry worship and all this stuff, but a lot of that base comes from stuff like this. He gave a lot of them over to the way they wanted to live. Y'all want to reject me? Y'all want to hate me? You want to live in your sinful nature? I'll send my prophets to tell you what's coming, but this is what you want. Live in it. So he's giving Ahab exactly what he wants because Jehoshaphat is very giving in this situation, and he does represent who? Jehoshaphat could have said, hey, man, I don't want to dress up like a king. Why don't we both dress up like king? We both got our king clothes on right now. Why you got to change and I got to stay like this? And they're going to be shooting at kings, like Eric said. Right? Because that was the goal of the battle, to take out the leader. Take out the leader, strike the shepherd, sheep will scatter. But in this instance, Ahab said, nah, let me dress up like that, and you go out there and you be the king and you lead the battle. And Jehoshaphat said, sure, that's a great idea. And he went out. He took all his mighty men, all his procession, he went out there, and a war began. Now, it was a rule from the other side, and a rule from the other side say, hey, if it ain't the king, leave him alone. Big or small, don't bother them. So the battle got high and they started to get close. And as they got close, the fighting intensified. And Jehoshaphat, what did he do? He ran. He got out of Dodge. He looked and seen that the army was great and got out of Dodge. So the army realized that the warring army realized what? That's not Ahab. That ain't the guy we came out here to kill. So they let him get away. But it was a guy who was like, all right, the war's over. Now remember, if you go back and you look up these conflicts, they were very brutal. You know, the fights were going all day. I mean, remember Joshua said, hey, dear Lord, stop the sun. And he said, so I can fight a little bit more. So these fights lasted for long periods of time. But every once in a while, the sides might be a little distance from each other, especially in retreat. And sometimes somebody would just say, you know what? I might get one. That's it. It said he shot his arrow in what? It didn't say he shot it with a fixed bow aimed directly at somebody. It said in his simplicity, he looked and said, I bet I can get me one of them. All right, everybody, let's go home. But the battle continued on, right? It says they fought some more. And as the fight was going on, this guy who would have, now they realize who it is. Man, the king has been struck. He's telling him, hey, I've been struck, man. Get me out of here. And the guy was like, all right, let me just prop you up in the chariot. But the fighting is still going on. And what happened to Ahab that day? He died. But wait a minute. Wasn't a prophecy? Now, what that prophecy said, help me out, Amari.
1 Kings 21:17. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, arise, go down and meet Ahab, king of Israel, who lives in Samaria. There he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone down to take possession of it.
Stolen vineyard.
Mhm.
The Jezebel let him steal. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Then she went and prayed about it.
Her plan.
Mhm.
You shall speak to him saying, thus says the Lord, have you murdered and also taken possession?
Hmm.
And you shall speak to him saying, thus says the Lord, in the place where dogs lick the blood of Naboth, dogs shall lick your blood, even yours.
Okay.
So who are we talking to? Ahab. So we got some. So Ahab is now dead. Now, if we just leave Ahab on the battlefield and they all come along and then prophecy fulfilled, right? But that's not what the story said because it has to be in a certain place. Where did it say it was going to be at? And Nebat was they jumped him somewhere, right? They lured him out. They took him. They killed him. They stoned him somewhere. So now Ahab's chariot is being brought back to town. The battle is over. Ahab's chariot is being brought back to town. And I guess it said, man, they start to wash it out. And as they wash it out, that same place by the whore's bath where they clean themselves up in a well, the blood is now draining out. And the dog comes along and licks up the blood of Ahab. Prophecies will be fulfilled. That's what that is to point to. Yeah, man, he licked the dog. It's disgraceful. Yes, very much so. We know that a king having his blood licked up in a well where the whores bathe and the dogs are licking his blood out as his chariots being on is a horrible defeat in history, and it's mentioned right here in the scriptures. We know that, but we also know that he made it back to the town that we were at. So this whole point of the dogs licking the blood out of the streets to show what? Prophecy will be fulfilled. Everything that the prophet said was going to come to play will be fulfilled. All right, so now after this happens, right? And if you stay in the Kings, the fight ends, and then they're going to say all types of nice things about Jehoshaphat, right? No? If we stay in Kings and we end at 22, it don't say things about Jehoshaphat? Don't just say Jehoshaphat ended the war and he went home? Kind of cut it off and say after that, it talk about Jehoshaphat, how old he was, you know, things he did, the peace. It doesn't really say anything about Jehoshaphat and Jehu in here, does it? Do it in the Kings. From y'all reading in y'all studies, does it say anything about? Now let's go to Chronicles. I say that because if I just leave you here, we'll think that Jehoshaphat did a bang up job. This is not to discredit him, but this is to show Jehoshaphat's path in the scripture. So we got to go to the chroniclers now. And it's kind of going to be a backwards progression to bring us up to where we are. Because we got to cover a lot of things that Jehoshaphat did in the process. All right, so 19. So this is after the battle. I want to make sure I didn't leave anything out. Thank you. This is after the fight. All right. Now, before the fight, Jehoshaphat, we know all the things he did. We talked about the way he improved the city. It seemed like in the Kings, they was talking about all the great things he did, but this is not to say he didn't do great things, but don't skip the chastising. Because it lets us know the one thing that we shouldn't do, the lesson that we should have got from Jehoshaphat and Ahab. And that is the lesson we get right here from the prophet. Because the prophets, they taught us, right? They gave us lessons. They gave the kings lessons. So we as filling that role of kings and priests, we have to listen to what the prophets are telling us about how we conduct ourselves. Jehu is now going to tell Jehoshaphat something very, very interesting for all believers. And Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned to his house in peace. This is after the fight. Now, this is what we were talking about earlier. The work of the righteous and the wicked together and how God sees it. Because this is what we see right here, right? That was something that they were put together because we have the full scripture, so we know that Ahab's fate was met that day, and it had to go like that. Can't say it should have went another way. It had to go that way for it to be fulfilled like that, which means that Jehoshaphat would have also had to line up with Ahab. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But it went that way. So therefore, that action has a consequence. And Jehu, the son of Hananiah, the seer, went out to face him. Now, Jehu is another prophet that we do not have any of the records because after the destruction of Israel and Jerusalem, They lost a lot of their historical documents. So you may see the book of Jehu or the records of Jehu. It was recorded by Jehu, but those records are gone, just like some of the other prophets, which we would probably got a little bit more in detail. What was lost has to be filled in by the short conversations that they're having right now to show you the impact of what Jehu would have had on Jehoshaphat. All right. So Jehu comes, and the son of Zasir went out to face him. And now this is his return because he's coming home, right? He fled. Jehoshaphat, do you help the wrong and love those who hate the Lord? Period. Like like that was it. When we think about how we want to help those who don't believe in the Lord, we're doing the same thing as Jehoshaphat. You help me out. Man, I can sit down and close it out for tonight. We can clap. We can end it right there. Do you understand to help wicked means to bring wrath on yourself? But God, I'm just helping.
Say the wicked. Are you talking, because that's a discussion in itself.
It could be,
Are
but
we
right.
saying, we don't have time right now, but are you saying people who outwardly express their hatred for God, or just people who just don't know God and they're in sin? You know what I'm saying?
We would have to go back and take a look at every.
That
See, you know what I'm saying? When we talk about the wicked here, we got examples. We got people who construct idols. Well, maybe people out here are still constructing idols. Maybe just idols of the mind. We got people who turn from worship and go to other people and scheme. Maybe we got those people out there. Now, this is not to say that some saved people don't do those things, because we live in a world reeked with sin. What it does say is this: there is a difference between those who, just like Ahab, rejects everything that God does, and then people like Jehoshaphat, who makes mistakes. You get what I'm saying? Ahab has no desire to bring, he didn't have a desire to bring back the righteousness to Samaria. He liked it the way it was. In fact, it was good for him. It was so good for him that, remember when war started out to let him to his death? You know what he said to Jehoshaphat to kind of sweeten the deal that I kind of left off the table just to see if anyone would bring it up? You know what he told Jehoshaphat? He said, Jehoshaphat, when we go up, don't worry about it. I already got men in there to take the city. I just need you to do what? Go with me. Deception. If you already got men in the city, blow your shofar, bring them out of the works, seize the city, sack the towers, take down the guard towers. You win, you didn't need it. But you would have to do that relying on who? No, he had to do that relying on God. But he tried to circumvent the system. You see what I'm saying? Well, I want God, but I'll just take Jehoshaphat for now. So now we see how the wicked approach the saints. They come. They come, help me out. Like they have no desire to change their own ways. They like being like the way they are. And if they can attach themselves onto, someone who they find have favor of God, they're going to do it. They want the provision, but not the right. Because Jehoshaphat now, when he gets chastised like Ahab did, Jehoshaphat was going to be like, wait a minute, I have offended the Lord. I got some things to do. In fact, he goes and re-tear up the land again. Like, it's too much in here. It's a difference in how you react to something that is gearing you to change. We see that the chastisement came from the Lord because he helped someone who hated the Lord. But, I love buts when they come in when something bad is told on you, like, yeah, you did this and the wrath of God is on you. Can you imagine Jehoshaphat said, he pulled a Fred and wait a minute. What you going to do what? And then he said, but. And he probably, woo, but you said but. Because think about it. The wrath of God, but the but. You get what I'm saying? But the but. Everyone in here was destined for the wrath of God. If I stop right there, flip over tables, burn the building down, go crazy because there's nothing left to hope for. But Christ came and took that wrath for each and every one of us in this room. That but is powerful, ain't it? Because let's see how powerful this but is for Jehoshaphat. But good matters are found in you. that you have removed, remember all that work he was doing before? Just out of his heart. He didn't do it because of the chastising, which most people, when they get in trouble, that's the first time they want to go to church. Now I've got chastised, time to run to the building. But Jehoshaphat did all his work before. He was good before. Before the chastising came, before everything came, Jehoshaphat first said, I want to tear down these things and give my life to God. So God knew that this was a path that they were walking together. Remember what Amos was saying? About, does a lion not come out and know his prey? You know, does he not? You see what I'm saying? Had we not met before? Like, Jehoshaphat knew these things, but he erred. We see the error right here, but we see the grace of God. But good matters are found in you. Did Jehoshaphat have these good matters in him because it was placed in him, and you know, he just said, well, God is in me, therefore the land should be pure and holy, let's get rid of everything? Or did he just wake up one day and be like, you know what? For myself, I don't want these temples here. For myself, I don't want this here. For myself, I don't want this here. Which way did that come about? God put the good in him to go and do those good things that right now are saving him from the wrath that was to fully come. Well, it's still coming though. All right.
Heart on seeking God. That's important because the Lord knows our hearts. I mean, we can be one thing to some people, but God really knows your heart.
Internally. And I agree with that. Because and I like that you said that God knows your heart. Because the first thing everybody, when somebody say God knows your heart, they'll say, well, the heart is deceitfully wicked. And nothing, and you kind of know what I'm saying? They want to just automatically make the heart wicked. But God makes the heart. If he hardens a heart, if a heart is wicked to do wicked deeds, it's his world, his plan, he does it. So, however, if you have that softened heart, a non-wicked heart, it's because he gave it to you. He gave Jehoshaphat this heart to do these good things. Because remember, Jehoshaphat is just like us. One in the many in the timeline. It's just his story is more known in obedience, right? Like right now, all of us have a plan or part of the grand design, right? The divine plan. We all have a part of it. Whether we believe it or not, we're all a part of it, just like Jehoshaphat was. We don't have somebody running around behind us penning all the stuff that we did throughout our lives. Because if it did, probably be like, remember when John said all those books that will fill? Think about how many of the books will have to say, let me tell you about Jesus, and then you talk about your life. When I was young, because the first thing is, most of everyone's story as a believer says, and if you was writing your book about Jesus, it would start like this: the time Jesus saved me. With anybody else story, it might start similar like that, right? We're all going to start talking about that time that he put the good in us. So now we see Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat, I'm not going to say he dodged the bullet, but I'm going to say the good was in him. And he tore down the things and laughed, and he prepared your heart to seek God. So Jehoshaphat dwelled in Jerusalem, and he went out again amongst the people from Beersheba to the hill countries of Ephraim and brought them all back to the Lord, God of their father. All right. And he appointed judges in the land. Now, here's where we talk about all the things that Jehoshaphat does, right? It's kind of almost like a recap of what he did before he was good, but now it's a lot more vigor. He went out, man. That wrath was coming for me, but the good saved me. So guess what? I'm gonna do more good. If you know good saved you, what would you do? More good. So we see this. We see Jehoshaphat, instead of being told news, shrinking and going like Ahab or some of the other kings, Jehoshaphat chose to do more good. All right. All right. So Jehoshaphat, we talked a little bit about this before. I kind of brought it up where he goes out. He's going to get all the priests in the land. They're going to go out and teachings and so forth. But let's go right to, we're still in 19. We see not the gospel as we see it known in the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? But we see things here that Jehoshaphat is doing that gives very similarities to what we know. Jehoshaphat dwelled in the city of Jerusalem, Beersheba, and in the hill countries, and he went out and brought people back to the Father, the gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ does what? Bring the men back to the glory of the Father, right? And in doing so, we now have discipleship. But in this terms, it was the judges. Jehoshaphat deemed judges to now go out and do the same thing and to teach the word, right? But in this going out and ascending in 6, and he said to the judges, watch what you are doing, for you do not judge for who? But for God. So again, now we see what Jehoshaphat's mindset kind of was, and something he would have known, right? Jehoshaphat knew that everything that everybody did wasn't for Jehoshaphat, but who they were doing it for was. So Jehoshaphat is now fully aware of what he may not have been aware of in the dealings with Ahab, but he's fully aware of it now. He's so aware of it to a point where it's now becoming an outward action. Well, now I've been told about the wrath that I was supposed to receive. But the good that I did before I knew I was in a wrath state, that is what saved me. So therefore, that same good is what needs to go forward, but not just from me. Because it was salvation to me, guess what it'll be to others? In Jehoshaphat's mind, right? What other reason will he propel people out to say, to stay from the wrath of God? So we see the discipleship. He tells them to guard because of who they speak for. And in Jerusalem, Jehoshaphat also appointed some of the Levites and the priests and some of the chiefs of the fathers of where? Israel. He even went and got some of the people of Israel for the right ruling of the Lord and the disputes, and they returned to Jerusalem. So now, what did Jehoshaphat just do? There was kind of broken in the sense when it came to Jeroboam. See, we can't forget the old kings, because the things that get broken, the new kings will come and try to put a Band-Aid on, repair it the best way they can. So what did Jeroboam do so long ago that Jehoshaphat is now fixing? Unification, but above unification, because remember, this whole story, the whole thing, him going out and teaching God, was for what? That people would do what? Return. Because what was the one thing built that was supposed to be the beacon? The temple, Jerusalem. Everybody started to worship in Samaria. Worship got taken away. The master said at the well, they worship here, you worship there. Neither one of you know where to worship at. But you see this divide and confusion, because he also filled in the total worship in truth and spirit. But you see right now something that has been torn apart by Jeroboam. A young king later on down the line is trying to repair. The people in Jerusalem, he didn't just say, because Judah and Jerusalem is saved, forget Samaria. Because Judah and Jerusalem is saved, I don't need to talk to the people of Israel. He didn't let his message just stay inside of his well house. He knew his other family on that side still required the word. So we see that Jehoshaphat takes this word to Israel, which allows the people of Israel to do what? Go back to Jerusalem where they were worshiping. All right. So now we see in the command, and then I'm at 19:9. And he commanded them saying, do this in the fear of the Lord, trustworthy. So we see that Jehoshaphat told them with the perfect heart. I think in that, my brain is coming and it's giving me kind of what the notes was. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the beginning of wisdom is understanding. That's why I wrote that there, because inside of this thing that Jehoshaphat was doing, if you notice, he keeps mentioning the fear of the Lord going out in the land. It's not the fear in the sense of everybody being afraid. See, I knew the notes would come back. I got a brain in here somewhere. We knew that Jehoshaphat was doing the one thing. When we say fear, you thought Jehoshaphat was out with a sword, stabbing people, say, I believe in God right now. No. What he was doing was he was increasing the understanding of the things that they did in their sinful lives and how it was taken away from God. They should fear that, because Jehoshaphat just seen what that fear looked like from Jehu, the wrath of God. You get what I'm saying? Jehoshaphat wouldn't have been telling everybody, fear Aram, fear Moab, even though these are places to get ready to get. Fear Ephraim. Jehoshaphat is saying, fear who? The Lord. This is the fear that's being taught, so the people in the land can now get the understanding of the one that saves them. Because what you're being saved from, Jehoshaphat got saved from what? All right. Now, this is where I'm going to close out, because we're going to finish talking about this fear to go in the land next time. But I wanna hit right here. Well, man, did I forget my thought that fast? Jehoshaphat is teaching the land to fear. Very specific. Jehoshaphat is teaching the people to understand that this fear leads away from sin. It leads the people back to where it all was supposed to be, the precipice of what Jerusalem was, a beacon to all of those who want to be holy, right? You say want to be holy, but they would come to this town or this city to seek out the Lord. They would hear about it. They wouldn't come to seek out the king, even though, yes, we do see the processions coming to see Solomon, and we know that went to his head, got a lot of wives, so forth and so on. But we see this. But when people would come, they would come to see what? The temple that was there. They would come to see the people and how they act. Jehoshaphat was saying, let's get this land. First, let's get all the idolatry out here. But let's get this land back to what it's supposed to be, where we're not sinful anymore. Because what you face when you sin against God is not, if I was to put it simply to say, if you sin against God, you're going to lose your left foot. That's very specific. But what we all understand to be the overarching thing that Jehoshaphat probably would have realized right then and there, it was the full wrath of God. When Jehu came to say, you have been saved, in a sense, from the wrath of God. In that time, they probably would have said, man, the wrath of God may be an army, maybe this. But each one of us in this room knows what the wrath of God is. So when he came to tell, and I'm closing this, when Jehu came to deliver this message to Jehoshaphat, because I want you to understand what's being said here. When he said the wrath of God, Jehoshaphat was fully aware that he was saying, you were damned for eternity. Not this battle that may come and wipe you out. You were set for the wrath of God somewhere in here. And Jehoshaphat would have seen that. He would have known that because it would have been clear to him. The wrath of God, it didn't have a specific, like God not gonna, you see what I'm saying? When it came to Ahab, it was very specific. Did you notice? Dogs, wife, kids, out of there. With Jehoshaphat, because he has understanding, it wasn't a whole lot of specifics to make that person say, I don't want to die this way. I want to change my life. Jehoshaphat, he gave him one thing to look forward to. The wrath of God. And as believers, we all understand that this is the thing that Jesus Christ saved us from. Not debt, not being broke, not being sick, not being any. He saved us from the wrath of God. The same way that he saved Jehu. We're just fortunate enough to be in the timeline to acknowledge it. And I thank the Lord for that. And that is my time. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
And 10, what you just said was here in 10, in every case that comes before you, from your fellow countrymen who live in the cities, whether bloodshed or other concerns of the law, command, decree, or ordinance, you are to warn them not to sin against the Lord, no matter what you do.
That's it. This is the understanding that we learn from the Old Testament that we get to see amplified magnitude in the New Testament. Remember, in the Old Testament, you got the reverse. You got a king that was dealing with many, in the sense of the king was in his dealings was the reverse. The king dealt with the kingdom in the sense of the need. The people needed a righteous king, the same way it came in the New Testament. But the king never came out to be on certain sides, to be the righteous king that was fully needed for the people, and it led them to sin. It led them to turn from God. And then you had some that led them back. Examples. But all of those examples was to see kings who came close, who were righteous, to see what they did, and once felt, so that we would see what we see in the New Testament. That the kings that set up high weren't the ones that we needed. We needed a king to come and be amongst the people. John tells us he sets his tent amongst us, his people. A king left his throne to go amongst the people. We don't see the kings do this. And now we have an example of one that did. Because of what? His heart. All right.